Start.
Hello friends, welcome back to Dr. Jaggi's Academy. In my last video, I discussed about the definitions of the physiology, pathology, pathophysiology and homeostasis feedback mechanism. Now I'm going to start with the major chapter, that is the what are the cell injury causing agents. So let's begin. So first of all, I will discuss about the very important two terms. One is the hypoxia and second is called as the ischemia. So now with the help of a diagram I am showing the first case. You can see hypoxia when the blood flow is normal but oxygen content is reduced. Now see the second condition. In this condition ischemia, there is some obstruction, and because of this obstruction blood flow is not there. So this is called as ischemia. So hypoxia, blood flow is normal, no oxygen, but in the ischemia blood flow is obstructed and so I will define ischemia: decrease in the blood supply, hypoxia, decrease in the oxygen supply, and anoxia when there is no oxygen. That is, so these are important terms. So I will just give examples of the ischemia and hypoxia in our body. So first take the example of the hypoxia. So let's say the person is suffering from anemia. That means the number of RBCs are reduced, the hemoglobin level is reduced, so oxygen supply will be reduced. So second condition, let's say person is poisoned with the carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide binds with the hemoglobin, so its tendency to bind with the oxygen is reduced. So oxygen is not carried, so it is again an example of hypoxia. Third, let's say person goes to a very high altitude, the oxygen content is very low, so again example of the hypoxia. So now coming down to the example of the ischemia. What we mean by ischemia? So when there is obstruction in the blood flow, let's say there is a thrombus. I will discuss about thrombus in the next slide. What is a thrombus? I'm just defining thrombus if there is an uninjured blood vessel and there is some clot in the uninjured blood vessel, that is called as a thrombus. Thrombus can obstruct the blood flow. Second, embolus. Embolus means if there is a clot and it is moving in the blood, that is called as the embolus. That is a traveling clot in the artery. That is the embolus. It also obstructs the blood flow. So but we have to remember one important thing. There are differences between hypoxia and ischemia, but in the common term, sometimes we use these terms interchangeably. Hypoxia and ischemia, these are the terms which can be used interchangeably. So I will discuss more about the clot, thrombus and emboli. So let's say this is the example of a clot. We are having an injured blood vessel. There is clot will be there. So whenever this kind of a clot is formed, so we use that word typically clot. But if there is no injury to the blood vessel, but still a clot is formed, then we use a term thrombus. So you can see from our diagram, if this thrombus is there, blood flow will be reduced. Now emboli. Now this emboli is not attached to the blood vessel, rather it is traveling in the blood. So this emboli, when the clot is traveling in the uninjured blood vessel, this is called as emboli. So remember, clot in the injured blood vessel, thrombus, attached clot, but it is uninjured blood vessel, a clot which is traveling in the blood, it is called as emboli. So now more about the hypoxia. So now important point is, when we talk about the hypoxia, it is to be remembered that we use a word perfusion. Perfusion is maintained. Perfusion means, let's say there is an organ, blood is coming and blood is removed. So perfusion is there. So perfusion is maintained. There is no alteration in the perfusion. Because perfusion is maintained, no metabolic waste products will be accumulated in the hypoxia. But in the ischemia, when there is an obstruction, perfusion is not maintained because blood is coming but it is not removed. So there is an interruption in the perfusion. Very important difference. So because perfusion is not maintained, whatever the metabolic products they are produced, they will not be washed away, they will be accumulated. So again, very important difference is metabolic waste is accumulated during the ischemia, but it is not accumulated in the hypoxia. So more terms about the hypoxia and ischemia. So when I talk about the hypoxia, so I am using a word, tissues are deprived of only oxygen. But in the ischemia, there is a reduction in the blood supply because blood supply is not there. So there is a deprivation of oxygen and other nutrients. But in this condition, reduction in the oxygen supply and only oxygen is not there. So as I told in the previous slide, perfusion is not maintained in ischemia, but perfusion is maintained in hypoxia. Another difference. Metabolic waste product is accumulated, and you know one of the metabolic waste product is the lactic acid. In this condition, metabolic waste is washed away. So because the metabolic waste is accumulated, you know, if the waste is not removed, it itself is going to produce an injury. So there is a more tissue injury in the ischemia. But if you compare the injury of the ischemia and hypoxia, injury will be relatively less in the hypoxia. Again, I am telling hypoxia and ischemia are different. There are very fine differences, but in common terms, sometimes we can use these terms interchangeably. So now I am going to discuss what kind of diseases can be there due to the ischemia. And you have to remember that ischemia is one of the most common causes of the disease, very important cause. And most important cause of the ischemia in our body is the heart, when the blood is not going to the heart. And it is manifested in the form of a disease which is called as angina pectoris. And there is a transient ischemia. Transient means when there is ischemia, but it is there for a very short period of time. So this angina, we will discuss all the diseases one by one. Here I am just giving the examples. But if this ischemia is there for a more prolonged period, that means if ischemia is a permanent one, then we are having a disease which is called as myocardial infarction. So both are due to the ischemia, to the heart. Similarly, if this kind of ischemia takes place to the brain, then if it is a temporary, transient, short period of time, then we use a term transient ischemic attack. In short form, we use a term TIA, transient ischemia to the brain. But if this ischemia becomes permanent, then we use a word stroke, which is very, very dangerous. Permanent ischemia, stroke. And permanent ischemia to the heart is called as myocardial infarction. So these are the very common diseases that take place due to the ischemia. So now the name of this chapter is what are the injury causing agents. So I have told you about one of the major important cause of the injury is the ischemia and hypoxia. I will discuss other agents which can produce the injury in our body. And second important is the chemical agent. You know, there are so many chemicals which can produce the injury to our body. I'm just giving some examples. Air pollutants, insecticides, carbon monoxides, asbestos, laboratory chemicals, drugs, endogenous substances in excess like glucose, diabetes mellitus, lipids, and bile pigments. So this is a long list of the chemicals which can be dangerous to the human body. So now, third agent which can produce injury to the body, infectious agent, infections. You know, there are a lot of microorganisms which can produce injury like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, viruses, worms. Again, this is the third reason which can produce injury. Fourth one, immunological reactions. Immune system is disturbed in our body. Now immune system, if it becomes very excessive, that is, there is a hypersensitivity. Hyper means excess, sensitivity becoming sensitive. The immune system is excessively activated, and we use a term for the hypersensitivity, allergy. So allergy is because of the excessive activation of the immune system. So examples, anaphylaxis, bronchial asthma, these are the examples of hypersensitivity, allergic reactions. So now, second kind, when the immune system starts targeting my own body, autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, then if the immune system gets depressed, first I told if the excessive activation of the immune system can produce allergies, but if the immune system is very down, it can produce immunodeficiency diseases like AIDS, SCID. These are because of the deficiency of the immune system. So now coming down to the fifth one, genetic defects. Genes are not properly functioning. There is a long list of diseases. I'm just giving some examples like Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, hemophilia, cystic fibrosis. These are some of the examples of the genetic diseases. Now diseases can take place because the nutrition is not balanced, imbalances. There can be nutritional deficiency, like protein is not there. It can be manifested in the form of marasmus, kwashiorkor, vitamin deficiencies like night blindness, scurvy, iron deficiency, which is manifested in the form of anemia. But you have to remember, it is not just the deficiency of the nutrients. If excess of nutrients are being taken, then they are also going to produce the nutritional imbalances like obesity, excess of eating, excess of nutrients, diabetes mellitus, person is taking a lot of glucose. He is not supposed to take it. Atherosclerosis, because he is taking a lot of fat material. So whether there is a deficiency, whether there is excess, the body is going to suffer. There are diseases which are going to take place if there is an imbalance between these two. Now, physical agents, again a very important reason. There is a long list of physical agents. I am just discussing one by one. Mechanical trauma, let's say a person falls, is having an accident. This is a mechanical trauma. Now, extremes of temperature, very high temperature, very low temperature, again a cause of the injury, which comes under the class of the physical agents. Now, radiations, X-ray, UV radiations, these kind of radiations, these are the physical agents. Electric shock, sudden changes in the atmospheric pressure. Typical example is if person goes into the sea divers, they go into the sea where there is a lot of pressure, but when they come down, very suddenly, then there is a precipitation of the bubbles. I will discuss in the subsequent chapter about this one. So, whether mechanical trauma, excess of temperature or low temperature, radiations, shock, changes in the pressure, all they come under the class of the physical agents. Now, aging, very important thing. You do all the kind of things, but age is going to increase. Aging itself is a cause of injury. With progressing age, what happens? There is a decrease in the synthesis of the proteins, but increase in degradation of the proteins. So there is an imbalance. More of the proteins are degraded, lesser proteins are formed. As a result, if there is any injury to the body, it is not going to heal. Or if it is going to heal, it is going to heal in a very slow process. So these are the things that I have discussed about you, about the what are the agents which can produce this cell injury. In the upcoming video, I will discuss more about this cell injury, which can be in the form of the reversible injury, it can be in the form of the irreversible injuries, or the cell can protect itself from the injury by undergoing the process which is called as cell adaptation. Thank you.